There are betrayals that cut so deep, they reshape the very foundation of who we are. This is the story of a father who gave everything, only to be cast aside like a stranger. But what his children didn't know was that the walls that sheltered them, the roof over their heads, the very ground they stood on while they turned him away, belonged to him all along. This is the story of Richard Morrison. And this is a tale of abandonment, karma, and a reckoning that no one saw coming. Richard Morrison was not a wealthy man, but he was a devoted one. For 32 years he worked as a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant just outside Cleveland, Ohio. Every morning at 5 a.m. his alarm would sound. Every morning without fail he would rise. His hands were calloused from decades of labor, his back permanently curved from bending over machinery, his hearing damaged from the constant drone of factory floors. But he never complained. Because every paycheck, every overtime shift, every weekend spent working instead of resting, it was all for them. His children. Michael and Jennifer. After his wife passed away from cancer when the children were just 9 and 11 years old, Richard became both mother and father. He learned to braid his daughter's hair by watching YouTube videos at midnight. He attended every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every school play, sitting alone in crowds of couples, but always with the biggest smile. He taught his son to drive, to fix a leaking faucet, to tie a tie for prom. He was there for first heartbreaks and graduation days. And when both children went to college, Richard worked double shifts to make sure they graduated without drowning in debt. He sold his car and took the bus for 2 years to afford Jennifer's study abroad program. He skipped meals so Michael could have a laptop for his engineering classes. And he did it all without telling them because he didn't want them to feel guilty. He wanted them to simply live. But here's what Richard didn't know. Here's the poison that was growing in the hearts of the children he sacrificed everything for. They were ashamed of him. Michael had become a successful corporate lawyer, living in a downtown penthouse, wearing $1,000 suits. Jennifer had married into wealth, a real estate mogul who showered her with luxury cars and designer handbags. And somewhere along the way, as they climbed higher and higher up the social ladder, they began to see their father differently. They saw his worn-out work boots as embarrassing. His simple, blue-collar stories at dinner parties as beneath them. His modest lifestyle as a reflection on them, a reminder of where they came from that they desperately wanted to forget. When Richard turned 65, he retired. The plant gave him a small pension and a gold watch. He was tired, his body broken from decades of labor. His knees ached. His hands trembled. He was alone in a small apartment, surrounded by photographs of children who called less and less, who visited even less than that. Then came the day that would break him completely. It was Michael on the phone. The conversation was brief, clinical, cold. "Dad, we need to talk. Jennifer and I have been discussing it and we think it's time you moved into a senior facility. We found a good one. It's clean, they have activities. You'll be around people your own age." Richard's heart sank. "But I don't need a facility. I'm fine here. I want to be near you both. I barely see you as it is." There was a long silence. Then Michael's voice, sharp and final, "Dad, we have our own lives now. Our own families. We can't be responsible for taking care of you. This is what's best. We've already made the arrangements. But I'm not sick, I'm not helpless, I just want. Dad, please. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We'll help you move next week." He didn't call back. He didn't argue. Because Richard Morrison had spent his entire life putting his children's needs before his own, and even now, even as they were discarding him, he couldn't bring himself to burden them. But here's where fate decided to intervene. Here's where the universe looked down at this forgotten father and decided that justice, cold and absolute, needed to be served. 2 years earlier, before Richard retired, he had done something his children knew nothing about. The house Michael was living in, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood, had gone into foreclosure. Michael's reckless spending and gambling debts had finally caught up with him. The bank was going to seize it within weeks. Michael had confided in Richard during one rare phone call, panicked, desperate, but too proud to actually ask for help directly. Richard didn't hesitate. He liquidated his entire retirement savings, every penny he had saved over 30 years, and he bought the house from the bank before the foreclosure could finalize. He put it in his own name, then quietly allowed Michael to continue living there, never mentioning what he had done, never asking for a single dollar in return. He had planned to transfer the deed to Michael once he got back on his feet. That transfer never happened. Because Richard was too busy surviving on his meager pension, too busy being pushed into a senior facility by children who couldn't be bothered to visit. 1 year passed in that facility. Richard sat in a shared room with a stranger, eating bland food, attending craft sessions he had no interest in, watching television programs that blurred together. His children came once on Christmas. They stayed for 40 minutes. Jennifer checked her phone the entire time. But Richard wasn't defeated. Late at night, alone with his thoughts, something hardened inside him. A clarity. He had given them everything and they had given him nothing in return. Not even basic dignity. Not even love. So Richard made a decision. He contacted Michael's wife, Sarah. And he told her everything. About the house, about the foreclosure, about the sacrifice he had made. He showed her the documents, the proof. And then he made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Sarah had been planning to divorce Michael for months. His gambling, his debts, his arrogance. She just needed leverage. Richard gave her exactly that. In exchange for her testimony about Michael's hidden assets and financial abuse during the marriage, Richard would sell her the house at half its market value after the divorce was finalized. She would get the home. The children would have stability. And Michael would get nothing. 3 months later, Michael didn't receive an eviction notice. He received divorce papers. And a legal discovery request that exposed every hidden debt, every casino visit, every lie. His wife was taking everything. And she had an ironclad case, built on documents provided by someone Michael never suspected. His father. Michael called Richard, his voice a mixture of rage and disbelief. Did you help her do this to me? Richard's response was quiet, measured. I helped her do what you forced her to endure for years. I gave her the truth, Michael. Something you've been avoiding your whole life. But that wasn't the end. Because Michael, in his desperation, discovered something else. The house deed. His name wasn't on it. It never had been. His father had owned it all along. Michael drove to the senior facility that same day, his sister in the passenger seat, both of them pale with shock and something else, fear. Jennifer had just discovered that her husband's company, the real estate empire she had married into, was currently trying to acquire a small property portfolio. Properties that included the house Michael was living in. Properties that Richard now controlled. But there was something else Jennifer didn't know yet. Something that would unravel in the most public, humiliating way possible. 2 days earlier, Jennifer had hosted her annual charity gala. The event of the season. 300 guests, crystal chandeliers, a live orchestra. She had spent months planning it, sending invitations to everyone who mattered in their social circle. Mayors, executives, the city's elite. It was her crowning moment, the event that would cement her status as a philanthropist and socialite. Richard had received an invitation. A courtesy, she told herself. He wouldn't actually come. He never did. But this time he came. He arrived in his old pickup truck, wearing his best suit from 30 years ago, the one he'd worn to his wife's funeral. The valet looked confused. Security almost turned him away. But Jennifer, seeing him from across the room, felt her stomach drop. She rushed over, her smile frozen, her voice a harsh whisper. Dad, what are you doing here? You didn't RSVP. You invited me, Richard said simply. I thought it was time I saw what my money bought. Jennifer's face went white. Dad, please, not here. But Richard walked past her, into the center of the ballroom. The orchestra was between songs. The room was quiet enough. And Richard Morrison, who had been silent for so long, finally spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt. His voice carried across the marble floors. Heads turned. Jennifer stood frozen. My name is Richard Morrison. I'm Jennifer's father. I just wanted to say how proud I am of my daughter, hosting this beautiful event for charity. It's wonderful to see her giving back. Polite applause began. Jennifer's face showed relief. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Of course, Richard continued, his voice steady. I remember when she couldn't afford to give anything back. When her father worked double shifts so she could study abroad in Paris. When he sold his car so she could have spending money. When he skipped meals so she'd never know what it felt like to go without. The applause died. The room went silent. People were staring now, uncomfortable, confused. But tonight, seeing her in this beautiful dress, in this beautiful venue, surrounded by all of you beautiful people, I'm reminded that she did learn something from her old man after all. She learned that some people are worth investing in and some people aren't. She decided I wasn't. And maybe she's right. Maybe a factory worker in a senior facility isn't good enough for a room like this. Jennifer's face was crimson. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Her husband David stood rigid, mortified. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you all for coming. Enjoy your evening. And Jennifer, sweetheart, thank you for the invitation. But I won't be staying. I have bingo at the facility at 8. They serve better food there anyway. He left the ballroom to absolute silence. 300 pairs of eyes turned to Jennifer. The whispers started immediately. Within an hour, the story was spreading through text messages and social media. By the next morning, Jennifer's name was synonymous with ingratitude. The charity event became known as the night the abandoned father showed up. They found their father in the common room the next day, Michael and Jennifer together, both of them destroyed. Dad, what is this? Michael's voice cracked. The divorce, the house, you helped Sarah destroy me. And Jennifer, that speech at the gala, why? Richard looked up slowly from his newspaper. His eyes, once warm and forgiving, were now distant. Cool. I didn't destroy you, Michael. I simply stopped protecting you from yourself. The house is mine. I bought it when you were about to lose everything. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel indebted. But I see now that was a mistake. Jennifer could barely speak, her voice broken. Dad, everyone was there. Everyone. Do you know what they're saying about me? About us? My reputation, my standing in the community, it's destroyed. David can barely look at me. And yet you could look at me, Richard said quietly, sitting alone in that facility, eating dinner by myself every night, watching other people's families visit while mine couldn't spare an hour. You could look at me when you decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience. Did you worry about my reputation then? My standing? The silence was crushing. The properties David wanted? Richard continued. I already sold them. Yesterday. To his competitor. At a price David couldn't match. I understand he lost a major promotion over it. The color drained from Jennifer's face. Richard folded his newspaper carefully. I'm doing exactly what you both taught me to do. I'm putting my own needs first. The money from those properties is paying for my apartment, my healthcare, my life. A life that you both decided was too inconvenient to be part of. But Dad, Sarah and the children can stay in the house. The new owner has agreed to lease it to her at a fair rate. Michael, however, needs to find somewhere else to live. I suggest you start looking. Richard's voice was steady, final. As for you, Jennifer, I imagine you'll need to have a difficult conversation with David tonight. Michael's marriage ended in divorce. He lost the house he thought was his, the wife he took for granted, and access to his children except for supervised weekends. Jennifer's life unraveled differently, but no less completely. After the gala incident, she was quietly removed from every charity board she had served on. Lunch invitations stopped coming. Her social circle evaporated overnight. David's resentment grew into contempt. The promotion never came and he blamed her entirely. Their marriage became a cold, hollow shell. She had built her entire identity on status and respectability, and in one night her father had stripped it all away in front of everyone who mattered. The cruelest part? She realized, too late, that the only person who had ever loved her unconditionally was the same person she had treated as an embarrassment. Richard moved into a modest but comfortable apartment. He joined a community center. He made friends his own age. He started painting, something he'd always wanted to try. And slowly, quietly, he rebuilt a life that was finally, truly his own. His children tried to reconnect, guilt eating away at them. They called, they visited, they apologized with tears streaming down their faces. And Richard listened. He was polite. He was civil. But he never forgave them. Not really. Because some betrayals are too deep, some wounds too permanent. He had given them everything and they had given him nothing when he needed them most. The truth is, karma doesn't always arrive with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it arrives quietly in the form of divorce papers. In the realization that everything you thought was yours was only borrowed from someone you threw away. Richard Morrison died 4 years later, at the age of 72. His children inherited what was left of his estate, a modest sum that they split quietly without fanfare. At his funeral they both spoke about what a good father he was, how much he sacrificed, how much they loved him. But in the end, love is not measured in words spoken at funerals. It's measured in actions taken when someone is still alive to feel them. And by that measurement, Richard Morrison died knowing the truth, that he had been a father to children who only became his children again when they needed something from him. This is the story of the abandoned father who owned the house all along. A reminder that those we take for granted may one day decide they've had enough. And when that day comes, no amount of apologies can rebuild what was destroyed. Thank you for watching. If this story affected you, leave a comment below. And remember, treat the people who love you like they matter before you discover they were the only thing that ever did.